Hello ladies and gentlemen, we are back with round 2 from the Doncaster Winner Box. Exciting because Roaring Skies is now legal, and this is a very nice thing indeed. I say legal, it is in fact not legal. If you're watching this as I upload this video, then in fact Roaring Skies isn't legal because the street date hasn't come around yet. It's legal as of Wednesday the 27th of May. This being much earlier than that, it's not legal yet. But this is an unsanctioned tournament where Roaring Skies now is legal. So it's one of the first real proper tournaments that I've heard of where it's legal. So we have recorded a bunch of games and I'm putting them up on my YouTube channel so to give you a really good look at the new cards. Now on the left here we have a lovely chap called Max, and on the right we have a lovely chap called Sid. I hope he doesn't mind me shortening his name to Sid. I don't think he does. I heard everyone calling him Sid yesterday. If I'm wrong, my apologies, sir. So we've got Max on the left, and he is going to be playing a Latios EX deck, but not the new Roaring Skies Latios EX that does all of the donking with the, just the one energy. Because the Latios EX from Roaring Skies does fast raid for 40 damage. If you go first, you can use this attack on your first turn. This is the other Latios EX, the one from Plasma Freeze, which does 40 damage and stops you retreating the following turn for 2 energy, or does 150 for 3 energy. With Double Dragon and Rayquaza, however, you can get all 3 of those energy on turn 1, and the whole point of this deck for Max is the Luster Purge for at least 150 damage on your first turn of the game. You can get 2 of the energy on there through Double Dragon, and then the new Rayquaza from Roaring Skies allows you to attach a fire energy as well. So although the Latios EX isn't new, the fact that it's got Double Dragon energy and Rayquaza to attack, that is what makes it new. Sid on the right is going to be playing a Seismitoad deck, but it's a very different build to the one we saw in the previous video piloted by Siobhan. This is a very, very different kind of deck. I mean, it's not very, very different. There's a lot of similarities. But certainly, he's playing Quillfish and he's playing Dusk Noir and such. So hopefully as we go along, we'll get to see some of those tricks being played. So it is recording the top table here. So we are on round 2, which means both of these players are 1-0. And we've already seen Max mulligan 3 times. Do we have a 4th? We have a Double Dragon energy. No, we do not. So Max finally gets a basic, and Sid gets 3 extra cards, which is quite nice. Although we start with Shaman. This is one of the downsides of Shaman. First of all, if you start with it, you can't use it. Second of all, it you can't put it down a new setup. But secondly, if you start with it, then you've got 110 HP Pokemon in the starting position that you want to kind of make use of. So we get the Latios EX, we get the Muscle Band, and we get the Double Dragon energy, and we see a Heads on roller skates, and we see an Acrobike as well. So Max does seem to be playing a bit of a speed deck here. There's a Hydreigon, the new one who has the ability which allows you to reduce the retreat cost by 2 of any dragon type Pokemon. Latios has a retreat cost of 2, as does the Reshiram, so that's going to be very interesting. Now, we do allow proxies in this particular tournament. I'm going to say that was probably a Scoop Up Cyclone. I know that is slightly annoying. There are not many proxies used in these videos, but there's going to be a proxy or 2 as we go along. And, this tournament was something like, I think this tournament was 10 days after the release of the set. So we allowed proxies here really in a kind of, we want people to be making decks with the new set. We want them to be able to do what they can. And, the only real way to do that is to allow proxies. So here we see there's no attack because it's his first turn of the game. Unfortunate, but hey-ho, what can you do? And I believe he's, just doing a free retreat there with Hydreigon and just putting another Latios EX active. Now, the problem for Max here is, now I don't know if he had any basic energy, but if he did have basic energy, he should have put that basic energy down. And the reason, very simply, is he's playing a Seismitoad deck. He knows that because Sid's got a Seismitoad on the bench. And when you're playing against a Seismitoad deck, like an Executor deck, you can imagine that they're going to be playing at least Enhanced Hammer, if not Crushing Hammer and all as well. It is easier to discard a special energy than it is a basic energy, and you're generally playing more basic energy than you are special. Ergo, you really don't want to be putting down special energy if you can help it. But I didn't get a brilliant look at Max's hand there, so it might be that he didn't actually have a better choice there. So we will let him go for that one. Now, we have a Quillfish, I want to say, active here. And that's basically just got an attack, an ability, which means you get, I think, 20 damage if you attack it. It's not amazing by any stretch of the imagination. It's very much just a case of, I'm going to put this here, and you're going to take some damage, and I'm going to get some time to set up. So we see him there searching through his deck with his Ultra Ball, and presumably going to be going for something like a Shame in here. He's got the Float Stone on the Quillfish, which is going to allow him to retreat, which is pretty handy. And he's got the... oh no, he's going for a Mewtwo. Mewtwo, not a bad attacker in this situation. And as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, Sid's deck is not built full-on for your Seismitoad. Now, don't get me wrong, it's got the Seismitoad, but he's got more tricks. In the previous... we see a bicycle there as well. Now, in the previous... in the previous game, we saw Siobhan's deck, which was very much just full-on Toad. Not the same thing here. Now, I believe there was a red card previously that turn. I might have missed that. He had a red card. I can't remember if he played it or not. But Max has certainly got a small hand here. And red card goes very nicely in Seismitoad decks because you play the red card, put them down to 4 cards, then you get the Seismitoad active, use Quaking Punch for 50 here, and there's no trainers. Crucially, Sid, I'm recording these videos straight after one another, so I'm going to end up getting confused. We are going to see a situation where, I'm going to get the names wrong. My apologies for that. Now, the good news is Max has got free energy on there, and that is absolutely huge because he's now going to be able to get the attack done. Biggest problem, of course, is that, as I mentioned, the attack does 150, Luster Purge, I believe it's called, and you discard all the energy. And here's the problem. He's going to do 170 damage. He's not going to do 170 damage. He's going to go for the first attack, which does 60 and stops you retreating the following turn. And that makes sense. What you don't want to do is do 170 damage discarding all your energy, because then you're not going to... I suppose Double Dragon will allow him to have both the energy to do the first attack next turn, but your opponent, we've seen a lot of these Seismitoad decks playing Super Scoop Up. What you don't want to do is do your big attack, lose all your energy, and then see them heal so you don't get the KO with 60. You're better off doing the 60 damage attack first, and then if they do heal, yes, they've got no damage on, but at least they've got no damage and you've got all your energy, as opposed to them having no damage and you having lost all of your energy. So, you can see there how that's, working out quite nicely. But he's going to have to get the attack off next turn. Now we see, now there was a Jirachi going down. I don't know if he's changed his mind about that Jirachi, but certainly we've got a, he was thinking about putting a Jirachi down. It's not on the bench there, but what he's going for here, he's going for a computer search. And it appears he's got a laser here. And of course we've got laser, and you can add that to the Verbank, so he's doing 50 damage, plus the poison at 30 between every turn, and he's got the, and he's got the trainer lock. So we see the DC going there on the Mewtwo, and obviously we go for the N there. Had Max not played a supporter last turn, maybe it would be worth dropping the Jirachi and going for a Juniper or something like that. But clearly we saw Max play a Juniper last turn. I don't acknowledge Sycamore till we rotate. So we might as well, play the N here, keep the Jirachi for when we need it. So Sid here, we can see he's got his little tricks, and there's a startling megaphone to get rid of the muscle band. It's not going to make a huge difference in the long run, in the short term, I should say. And this is big, because Max is going to get the KO here. However, it's going to be at a bit of a cost. He's going to get the KO, but the problem is he's still in incurring that poison damage. And that's a bad thing. Oh, we see the Jirachi going down, which is not good because Jirachi dies very, very quickly. And I suppose you could argue that he's already got the Shaman on the bench, so it's going to be a weird thing we're going to see as we go forward in the format. It's kind of like, well, I've already got an 110 HP Shaman on the bench. I might as well drop a 98p Jirachi, because if my opponent wants a cheap and easy Lysandra prize, they've kind of already got one. So, you know, and he, at the end of the day, he needs a supporter. And he gets the Colress for 8, which is pretty good going. Although, actually, that new Skyfield Stadium does mean we can sometimes Colress for up to 16 here. It's quite interesting. Now, what Sid's doing there is he's building up a Mewtwo on the bench to kind of get around in the previous game. And if you haven't seen the previous game yet, the link is in the description of this video, so I encourage you to go back and watch that before this one, so you can kind of follow the tournament along. But we saw Shivam in the previous video, he was only hitting with the Seismitoad, and it's not always enough. You know, you don't always get enough damage done that way. You know, it takes a long time to finish out the game. So what Sid's going for here is he's building up a Mewtwo on the bench so that when the Seismitoad goes down, he can bring up a Mewtwo for a big KO. Now, he's got a decision to make here, but it's a fairly easy one. You go for the KO with Seismitoad here. Although at 110, 60, I can't remember if 60 will do enough. Have to give me 1 second to look that one up. But he's going to be doing, you know, a maximum of 30 damage here, plus the 30 for the poison. So he's doing 60, which will, you know, with the 110, put him on 170. So he's doing all right here. He could go for the Mewtwo, and the Mewtwo would do an extra 10 damage to get the KO if he's got 110 HP, which is, you know, interesting. You know, it will enable him to do an extra 10 damage, which is useful, shall we say. You know, the extra 10 damage is quite good. But no, I'm double checking here. It has only got 170 HP, so the Seismitoad is the correct play here. There's 110 damage on. The 30 from Seismitoad puts him up to 140, and then he'll die from poison between turns. I did have to look up the Latios very quickly, but can you remember the HP of every EX that hasn't been played in tournament since release? I would suggest not. And of course, we've got a nice little N there. And you're seeing a lot of cards played by Sid that you don't usually see in Seismitoad decks. We've got N, which is not a Seismitoad kind of card at all. Especially nowadays when you're going for pure speed, because N isn't really for speed decks. Similarly, we see Water Energy, so we can actually use Grenade Hammer. So Zid's deck here is not one which is relying purely on Laser and Quaking Punch. He can bring out the big hitters. Presumably that proxy on the bench there is a Reshiram. I would imagine it's a Reshiram anyway. I say we see the Fire Energy here. Reshiram is the new Dragon Pokemon which allows you to attach a Fire Energy through an ability to one of your Dragon Pokemon. And the only reason you play Fire Energy is the Reshiram, and if it's benched, you know, it's going to be a Reshiram. Because what else would he be playing in this situation? You know, this is a very straightforward deck Max is playing. You've got the Latios to try and do Luster Purge, and then you've got your Shaman to draw cards, your Jirachi, and you've got the Hydreigon. It might actually have been a Shaman. That wouldn't be completely unheard of. I missed when he put it down whether he actually drew any cards there. So my apologies. But if we see what's happening here, the Latios doing Mach Flight for 40 damage, and it stops the Seismitoad retreating the following turn. Although, to be completely honest with you, why would the Seismitoad want to retreat next turn? Especially if he can go and get a laser here, he's in a fantastic position. He hasn't used his energy attachment for the turn, so he's going to be able to attach another energy to that Mewtwo to start building up a big attacker. And there we see the laser being played. It is a heads, so now we've got sleep, we've got poison. One big problem here, of course, is that Luster Purge does 150 damage, which means that if that Latios wakes up and attacks, it's going to get the KO on the Seismitoad. Now, that's actually going in Max's favour, because if we try and flick this forward a couple of turns, right here, Sid is not going to get the KO on the Latios. He's going to put him at 130 damage. Going into Sid's turn, So going into Max's turn, he's going to be on 130 damage. 130 damage. Oh, we see a Getsis there. Oh, that's brutal. Not only is he getting 4 cards, but he's putting Max down to just 1 fire energy. So here's the deal. We know Max is going to be able to get the KO next turn if Latios wakes up. If Latios wakes up, he'll be on 130 HP. He'll be able to do 150 damage, KOing the Seismitoad. He will then go on to 160 HP, meaning he's going to die at the end of Sid's turn, no matter what Sid does. So Sid can just promote a Quillfish, and it will die, and then the Quillfish is there to do a bit of extra damage. That would then, the next turn of Max's, allow him to drop a double Dragon Energy, Lysandra Muscle Band, to KO the 170 HP Mewtwo, or actually he could even just go double Dragon Energy, Lysandra the Shaman or Jirachi for the win, but it depends what he just drew off his prizes. It's going to be absolutely huge. Sid really is going to want to try and go Seismitoad here, because we've seen Max's deck plays roller skates, we've seen that it plays acrobike. It's going for speed. Max is playing a speed deck with a bunch of these speed cards, so really here he's going to want to, Sid wants to trainer lock him, because Max is in the driving seat. Sid is going to get a KO here. That Latios is going to die from poison. So if Sid can't get the Seismitoad, then he wants to just leave the Quillfish active because it's a single prize Pokemon. It means Max is going to need a Lysandra to get the win. But also Max is going to have those trainer cards and all available. Now I think I saw an Ultra Ball in his deck, and he's going to have a bench space left, so hopefully he's got another Shaman in the deck he can use to try and draw, quite a few cards, draw the Lysandra and a double Dragon Energy, and he's fine. Now, I want to say that he's used 3 double Dragon Energy. I could be wrong about that. He's definitely used 2. I think he's used 3. But either way here, this is... we've only got a turn or 2 left of this game. This game is not going to last very long, because you'll see Shavam there's got a bunch of energy on his Mewtwo. Now, if he doesn't have the double colour, oh, that's horrible. Sid there is using a VS Seeker to go and get an N, and he's N'ing him down to 2 cards. So you've seen red cards, you've seen N. Not only is Sid, and it's a very, very different Seismitoad deck. It still plays Shaman, but you can see here, he's going for the whole look. Shaman is good. Shaman allows me to draw cards. But really here, I'm going to use Seismitoad to block your use of trainers. But I've got other options. I've got the big Mewtwo play. Now, he should not be putting the Mewtwo active. Now, putting the energy on the Mewtwo there is a good play. Seismitoad is not going to be used. Yeah. Seismitoad was either going to be used that turn or not used at all this game. Seismitoad is now irrelevant. Mewtwo there, he just wants to put enough energy on. There is that. Does he have the Lysandra? Oh, he's got an Acrobike, and he's drawn a Roller Skates off the Acrobike. Can he hit a head? Can he get a Lysandra? He gets the head. What does he draw? There's a laser there. He hasn't thrown it down. If he doesn't have a Lysandra, he's not going to win. Now, we do see a Super Scoop Up. He's going to use this to get the Jirachi. And in theory, he can play the Jirachi, use a Jirachi to get a Lysandra. Lysandra up any of the EXs on the bench that aren't Seismitoad and get the win. It's prized. That is absolutely heartbreaking. I don't know that it's prized, but he's just looked... Oh, no, it's not prized. I don't know why he pointed at his prizes like that. But regardless, Max takes game 1. Now, this is a deck which we haven't talked about very much. I don't know why he pointed at his prizes. He looked through his deck and pointed at his prizes as if his Lysandra was prized. This is a deck we haven't really seen or heard much about. Everyone's talked about the other Latios EX. Now, the other Latios EX is also very interesting. Like I say, it's got the attack for 1 Psychic Energy that does 40 damage on the very first turn of the game. And there's an interesting deck doing the rounds in Japan. In Japan, they're playing Heart Gold, Soul Silver on. And through a combination of plus powers and recycle and things like Acrobike and Roller Skates, you can actually run through your entire deck in 1 turn, and you can knock out an EX on the very first turn of the game. It plays the Dragon Vault card first ticket, which allows you to go first regardless of the coin flip if you have it in your opening hand. And recycle, you flip a coin, and if it's heads, then you get to put a card from your discard pile on top of your deck. So you just use that to recycle plus powers and basically KO anything. And then, of course, at the end of your turn, you play Lissandra's trump card to put it all back again so you don't deck out. It's, infuriating, definitely infuriating, but very interesting. I said Heart Gold Soul Silver on, I think I meant black and white on, my apologies. But you get recycle and plus power. This is not that Latios EX. This is a different Latios EX. It's not one people have been talking about, but it's interesting nonetheless. And we see another mulligan from Max there. Now, we know he plays Hydreigon. We assume he plays Reshiram. We know he plays Jirachi and Shaman. And we can assume he plays 4 Latios. So, he's now mulliganed 4 out of 5 times he's tried to draw. I think he's getting pretty unlucky here. But he's 1 game up, so, let's not worry too much. The Quillfish, if you're interested, is the one from Flashfire. It's got the ability counter-attack Quills, which, like I say, if you attack it and do damage, even if you knock it out, you take 2 damage counters. It just works nicely as a bit of a wall. It also does 20 damage plus poison for a double colourless, which can be used if you really don't want to attack with an EX. But hey-ho. So, Sid's going first, and we see he opens with a Duskull as Max opens with Hydreigon. And one of the things I've mentioned on my podcast, PTCGRadio, is that the Hydreigon is kind of annoying in that the ability reduces the retreat cost of all dragon Pokemon by 2, but it itself has free retreat, as in, 1, 2, free retreat. So, you can't actually retreat Hydreigon for free using Hydreigon. So you put Hydreigon there and it gives Latios free retreat and it gives Reshiram free retreat, but it in itself is a catcher target that you'll have to kind of spend an energy retreating, which is annoying. Now, one question we didn't answer about Max's deck in the previous game is whether he plays Mega Latios EX. Now, honestly, I would imagine not, but we didn't see in the previous game. We'll have a look here. Now remember, if you've got 2 Latios EX, the Mega Latios can evolve from either of them. Either the Plasma Freeze or the Roaring Skies. The Mega Latios allows you to, for free energy, you discard 2 energy and it does 120 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So, essentially Max would have an energy on it. He would attach a Double Dragon and discard it to snipe a Shaman off the bench for 2 prizes. So, I think he should be playing, 1 or 2 of these. However, if you're playing 1 or 2, then you really need to put the Spirit Link in so you don't end your turn Mega Revolving. Because remember, to Mega Revolve without a Spirit Link is to end your turn. And then you're talking about, an extra probably 4 to 8 cards just for a kind of niche attack. Although with Shaman getting bigger now, maybe it's going to be worth it. So the Duskull has a Float Stone, so he's going to be able to get out of the active. And we've got a Seismitoad there with a DCE and the Muscle Band, ready to use Quaking Punch next turn. Shame he couldn't get a Quillfish going, but hey-ho. So he's going to play a Roller Skates his Max, and we see a Heads there. So he's going to be able to get to draw 3 cards, and he's really looking for a Latios. Remember, a Latios... there we see one of the Reshiram. There we go, he does play them. Ideally here, he'd want to be getting the Latios out so that he can attach 2 Double Dragon energy, so that he can do Mach Flight for 40 damage, and the next turn do Luster Purge for the KO. Of course, and I know we didn't really see it last game, but we've got to be assuming that Sid's playing some kind of energy denial cards. So maybe it would be a better idea to try and get the Reshiram into the active, so that he can essentially just start piling energy onto a couple of Latioses, and there's the first one there. Now, you don't want to pile energy onto the same one, because you discard all energy to do Luster Purge. So whereas in the previous game, Luke just wanted to get as much energy onto one as he could, so he could still do the damage. So if he had 6 energy on and 3 got discarded, he could still do Rayquaza's attack. Here, you really want to be putting energy onto a couple of different Latioses, so that if one Latios runs out of energy, you can use free retreat with Hydreigon EX, and pick up another Latios to do so. So, honestly here, I think, from this N, Max would probably be looking for something along the lines of, a Fire Energy, a Double Dragon Energy, and a Switch. So we can put free energy onto Mega Latios, ready for next turn, when he can, start putting energy onto a second Latios. And there we see the Double Dragon Energy. We see a Muscle Band. Can he hit heads on roller skates? I can't see. But he's not drawing cards, so let's assume not. There is an Ultra Ball, and he's going to search for, and presumably a Shaman here. There we go. So that unmarked card must have been a Reshiram, because you wouldn't discard a Shaman of Ultra Ball to get a Shaman. That would be ludicrous. And we know it's a Pokemon, so we're going to assume it is a Reshiram. Like I say, I think one proxy in 2 games is not bad for, seeing these Roaring Skies cards in action and getting a look at new decks. And that is one thing we've tried to do on the stream today is, really get you a look at new decks, especially in Top Cut when that comes up. So we see the roller skates, but nothing there. So we see a second Hydreigon going down, and that is very interesting, of course, because now Hydreigon does have free retreat, which makes us all very happy indeed. Hydreigon EX, for those of you that aren't familiar, the ability reads... Let me just grab the text up here. Trying to two-screen it while I'm recording. If there is any stadium in play, the retreat cost of each of your dragon Pokemon is a double colorless less. So we can assume that it stacks. So now it doesn't say you can only use 1 per turn, so now it would be 4 less. Of course, I should have mentioned, and I suppose I kind of just did, we should mention that there needs to be a stadium in play. And Max doesn't have... I don't know if we've even seen any stadiums from Max yet. I also find it interesting that Max is playing an N, given that he is essentially going for, a bit of a speed deck here. But playing 1 or 2 N is not the worst play ever, especially given that he's essentially playing a deck that does 170 for... and you can get it powered up in 1 turn. So, playing going behind by a few prizes, playing an N to give your opponent less cards, and then trying to Luster Purge turn after turn... I can, see some cool stuff there. And let's not forget that Luster Purge could actually really come in... not Luster Purge, the first attack could really come into... he has to play a switch there. Despite having 2 Hydreigon EX on the bench, he has to play a switch. Hey-ho. These things happen. So there goes a Shaman for some more cards. And then we see another energy attachment there. And there goes the Burbank City Gym. So we finally see a stadium. And we're going to get a Luster Purge, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to get... Is this turn 1? I believe this is a turn 1 knockout. It's been a very long turn. But I believe that is, in fact, Max's first turn of the game, doing 180 damage to knock out a Seismitoad EX. Which is really quite impressive. So if anyone, thought that Latios couldn't work, well, consider yourself... at least temporarily proven wrong. There go all the muscle bands. Oh, and a red card. That is, mean, shall we say. Of course, we've seen from many decks in the past, a good first turn getting a KO is not indicative of a win coming later game. Plenty of decks do well early and then run out of steam kind of halfway through. So don't think that Max has got this game sewn up. He's got no energy on the board. He's been red carded down to 4 cards. He's got no tools on the board, and we see a Seismitoad coming up. We see a laser with a Verbank out, and we see a Quaking Punch. There's 80 damage, and he's asleep, and he's poisoned, and he's trainer locked, and he's got no energy on the field. And this is something which has been true of speed decks essentially for as long as they've been played. You can do very well on a speed deck, but then similarly, it's very easy to run out of steam pretty gosh darn quickly. So, something which must be borne in mind here. And, oh, that's really bad. He just, nothing, absolutely nothing. No energy, no supporter. And now he wakes up, but he's on 110 damage, and as previously discussed, he's got 170 HP, so he is not long for this world, because he's going to go up to 140 with Quaking Punch, and then he's going to die from poison, and Grenade Hammer does 130 damage, add a Muscle Band that does 150 damage, with a laser with Verbank out, and given that they both play Verbank, we can assume that Verbank's going to stay out. That means that potentially Sid's going to get a KO this turn. Next turn he can Grenade Hammer for a KO, assuming he can get a laser, and then the turn after that he's going to Grenade Hammer for a KO, which is huge. I mean, we could see a win from Sid here, 2 turns from now, or 2 of his turns from now. Of course, what Max... Lysandra can completely ruin this plan by allowing Sid to bring up a bench Pokemon. But honestly, if I was Max here, when this Latios goes down, I'd just stick a Reshiram active. And my plan would be, I am just going to pile energy on as fast as I can. And I'm just going to let him kill the Reshiram, because remember the whole theory of a 7-prize game. Sid's got 6 prizes to take, so he takes 2 prizes, he's now got 4 prizes to take. He knocks out the Reshiram, he's got 3 prizes to take, but if Max only leaves the X's out, he can only take those 3 prizes by knocking out 2 EXs, and in fact taking 4 prizes. There goes the Dusclops for stage 1 there, and there goes the KO. And he has put the Reshiram up. Now, I don't know if that proxy is a Latios EX. I thought it was a Reshiram. There we go. Oh, well, that's it. Oh, that's horrible. Because he didn't even get the second attachment there. And then we see another Seismitoad going down, because there's no point putting another double colourless energy on Seismitoad. So, and there's the Lysandra. And does he have a laser? He does have a laser. So the Hydreigon is going down. Although... Oh no, the Hydreigon is not going down, sorry, because had he had the second water energy, that Hydreigon would go down, but of course he can't Grenade Hammer here. If he could Grenade Hammer, he'd want to go after the Latios with energy on. Instead, he's going to pull up the Hydreigon, and he's going to do 50 damage plus 80 for poison. Let's give 30 for poison to 80. Going into his turn, it's going to be on 110, and it's going to be on 170 coming out of Sid's next turn, which is going to give Max the opportunity to retreat it, because Hydreigon's got 110 HP. Honestly, if I was Sid there, I wouldn't have gone after the Hydreigon, because if the Hydreigon wakes up, it's got free retreat, whereas the Shaymin doesn't have free retreat. And even if Max attaches to the Shaymin to retreat it, he's still not going to be able to attach to Latios and do an attack next turn. Plus, the maths works out perfectly. If you Lysandra up the Shaymin, you do 50 damage plus 30 for poison, which means it's got 80 damage going into Max's turn, and will actually die from poison going into Sid's turn, allowing him to just Grenade Hammer for the KO and the win. So it wakes up here, it's going to have free retreat by virtue of having 2 Hydreigons out, and it's a completely wasted Lysandra. And Max just explaining to Sid there that it stacks, so its retreat cost is actually essentially -1. So I think that was a misplay on Sid's part there. However, it's going to become... No, it's not going to become... I would say it would become fairly irrelevant if he got a Dusknoir out, but he's still done 80 damage, not 110, because... he's not actually... I don't think it's going to matter, to be honest. He looks to have this, this game under control, but it just seems like he threw away a KO there. Had he got up the Shaymin, then Max's only chance... clearly it would have woken up, and clearly it's got a retreat cost of 1, so he could have retreated it using the energy, but now he would have had the opportunity to essentially, waste one of Max's energy attachments, whereas now, with a double dragon energy, he can attack with Hydreigon. Hydreigon's attack does 80 damage for free energy, and isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. Goes through safeguarders, etc. Here, however, it doesn't seem like the end of the world, because, Sid's in a good position. He's got 2 Dusclops down now, so, in reality, as long as he can do a bunch of damage here, he's going to get the win next turn. Because, he's going to do a minimum of 50 damage here. With a laser, he's going to do more. And then next turn, assuming he can get a Dusknoir, there's going to be 130 damage on the field. That means he's going to be able to KO a Shaymin with a bit of damage left over. 20 damage left over, in fact, and then a muscle-banded Grenade Hammer will be enough to KO the Latios and get the win. So, At this stage, all Sid is going to need to do to get the win is have a water energy and a Dusk Noir. Because like I say, there's 130 damage on Max's side of the board. He can put 110 onto the Shaman to take 2 prizes. He can then move the other 20 onto Latios, giving it 150 HP. And a muscle-banded Grenade Hammer would do 150 damage. So with a Dusk Noir and a water energy, Sid can win this turn. Now, he's put his energy down very carefully, so that he's got a DCE and a water on each Seismitoad. And that does make sense in one regard, in that if you put all your energy on one Seismitoad and it gets KO'd, there goes your energy. And we've seen that with when he's not trainer locked, Max can get a one-hit KO. However, there's not much chance of that when he is trainer locked, and here he could have a Grenade Hammer ready to go. And, he doesn't. Now, if he could do a Grenade Hammer for 150, he wouldn't even need the Dusk Noir this turn. He could get the Dusk Noir next turn, and I really don't know why he hasn't gone for a Dusk Noir here. I can only assume it's prized, because he's just played an Ultra Ball and not gone for the Dusk Noir. Had he gone for the Dusk Noir, he'd be able to KO the Shaman, draw 2 cards, and then potentially draw a couple of prizes, and then use that to potentially get the water energy. So I don't quite know what's going on here. I can't see his prizes. I can only assume the Dusk Noir is prized, because now he's lost his Seismitoad. Max is down to 2 prizes, and like I say, Sid can still get the win this turn. And I was incorrect, sorry, there isn't a DC on the Seismitoad, it's just a water energy. So he's going to need an energy here. And is that 6 benched Pokemon? No, sorry, that's 5 bench Pokemon. They're just spread out quite nicely. The Dustlops not sitting on the Dusk Noir properly, so there are only 5 bench Pokemon. And here we see the Seismitoad going... Oh, no, there is a DC on there. I was correct. It got hidden. So here... I still think Sid's going to win this game. Because, again, Max doesn't have enough damage on him. But it seems like he's going the long way about it. However, I must again repeat that if his Dusk Noirs are prized, then that becomes completely irrelevant, because he couldn't have got the Dusk Noir previously. But you can see how useful Dusk Noir is in this situation. And actually, you can see he hasn't got many cards left in his deck at all, so I can only assume it is prized. But there we see the retreating. Now, if Sid were ever to get a Dusk Noir out, this game would be over right now. Right now. There's so much damage on the board. And it wouldn't quite be over now. There's only, no, he'd be 20 damage short. He could only put Latios up to 150. But even so, the Dusk Noir there really is absolutely key. So it looks like he's using VS Seeker for a Lysandra. Up comes the Latios, and this could basically be the game here. Because he brings up the Latios, he KOs it, he draws 2 prizes. If he's drawn the Dusk Noir, he doesn't even need to attack next turn, because there's more than 110 HP on Max's field. So if he has drawn the Dusk Noir from his prizes there, Sid has now got this game, and we are going to a game 3. So the question is, what can Max do here? And the answer is very little. He's still trainer locked. So he ain't getting a KO this turn. And... or no, a Double Dragon Lysandra would do it. He needs to be able to attack. No, because even with a Double Dragon... Hydreigon only does 80 damage, and there's no muscle band down there. There was before the startling megaphone came down from Sid earlier in the game. So here, Max needs to KO that Jirachi to win the game. And we don't know if he's going to be able to. Now, if he can KO the Jirachi, he's going to win. He would need a Lysandra first of all. That would be very important. But he would also need to be able to do 90 damage. Now, he's not going to do it with Hydreigon, because he only does 80 damage. So he'd need, a Double Dragon and a Fire and a Latios and a Lysandra. That's a lot to ask for. Max doesn't appear to have much at all, and he has just passed. Did he get the Dusknoir off the prizes? Oh, he didn't, but it didn't matter. And there was a Dusknoir in the prizes. The Dusknoir Water were his last 2 prizes. Now, he may only play 1. If he does, that's how it ended up prized. So that would explain why he didn't go for early games. We are going to game 3. And all he did there, he put a Water Energy onto the Seismitoad so that he could Grenade Hammer. And then he plays a Lysandra to grab either the Jirachi or the Shaman. Grenade Hammer for the KO. And we're going to game 3. And what I like is that, Dusknoir aside, just like in the last round, we've seen both players' decks doing what they do. Now, if you're wondering, hang on a second, this is a very Seismitoad heavy tournament. Yeah, it is. You're going to be seeing more Toad, I'm afraid. But the whole point, I'm assuming most of the people watching this video are, at least, when it's first uploaded, are going to be watching it because they want to learn about Roaring Skies in advance of Nationals. And trust me, ladies and gentlemen, if you're playing at a Nationals where Roaring Skies is legal, you are going to be seeing a heck of a lot of Seismitoad. It's going to be everywhere. Certainly, if I was going to Nationals intent on doing very, very well, it would be one of the decks I would be considering. That and Mega Groudon Wobbuffet. If you want to know more about that, check out my podcast this coming Wednesday. I believe it's going to be week 145, when I'm going to be looking at new decks from Roaring Skies. And shall we say that Wobbuffet Groudon, it's going to get talked about a fair bit. So, decent starters from both of them. Max is going first. He starts Latios EX, which is good, although obviously he'd rather start Reshiram for fairly obvious reasons. It gives him an extra energy attachment. And Sid has started with a Quillfish here, which is good because if he doesn't, if he doesn't get a Seismitoad out next turn, then he's got the Quillfish active, which if Max attacks into it, is going to do him 20 damage. So we get the Double Dragon energy, and once again, I'm going to repeat what I've said previously. You should really, especially as you're not attacking this turn, you should attach the fire, not the Double Dragon energy. Now, we've still not seen any energy denial cards from Sid here, but honestly, it's a Seismitoad that I would still be expecting to see them. And he's dumped a fire energy there. And I suppose part of the reason to dump a fire energy, is so you can get the Shaman out. And I suppose if you've got to dump one, you should dump the fire energy, not the Double Dragon. But as a general rule, I'm still in favour of leaving the special energy till you really need it. But he's emptied his hand, and obviously if you're only going to attach one, he might be better off attaching a Double Dragon, unless an Enhanced Hammer comes down. But we haven't seen one of them. So we see the Shaman, and he draws 6 cards. The Muscle Band goes on to the Latios, and we're going to be seeing 60 damage next turn. We go for the Super Scoop Up. It appears to be a heads, so he picks up the Shaman, and there we go. This is good. So he plays the Ultra Ball to fin his deck a little bit. He's going to be going for a second Latios or a Reshiram. There is the Reshiram. Oh, and this is wonderful, of course, because he's got the Hydreigon down, and the Latios now has free retreat, so he can retreat into the Reshiram, and hopefully he's going to draw a fire from this Shaman, and yes, he did with his final card, so we can just, oh no, sorry, he needs a Stadium. I keep getting ahead of myself, I keep forgetting that you need a Stadium there. We'll see another Super Scoop Up here, which I can only assume is a Tails. Oh, maybe that is a Shaman, which is, and there's a Stadium, so we can now free retreat and do the extra attack. Maybe that one proxy is a Shaman, because he just put it down and drew cards, although that does make me wonder why he discarded one with an Ultra Ball to get a Shaman the previous game. Let's just leave it as a mystery. So we finally see a Juniper to draw a few more cards, and this is an excellent, excellent start from Max here. The one... is it not going to be a laser? No, there is going to be a laser. And this just means that if he uses Latios' first attack next turn, he's going to be able to get a KO. And Sid's playing enough non-EX Pokemon, like the Dusknoir line, that, Max is probably going to be able to get around a 7 prize game. He can always just, Lysandra for the last prize after knocking over a couple of EXs. So Max is still trying to draw more cards. He's going through this is a brilliant turn 1 from him here. If he had a switch, and we don't know if he does or not, I can't see his hand well enough, he would have been doing 180 this turn, which is just ludicrous, but possible to do. But again, like we saw in the previous game, the winner of this matchup isn't going to be determined by whether Max is able to do 180 damage with Latios. The winner of this game is going to be determined by asking whether Max is going to be able to keep it up. So we see a Lysandra and we see a laser here, and that is, presumably a heads. Yeah, so we see a heads there on the laser. So he's poisoned, he's asleep. We got the Quillfish active and still asleep. So Sid's going to want to be going for a Seismitoad here, and he's going to need a switch or an escape rope. And I'm fairly sure, if I remember correctly, I think we saw an escape rope from him in the previous game. I don't have their deck lists on me. Maybe in future I should try and get their deck list for these videos. But I don't have a deck list on me, so I can't tell you if he plays them or not. But regardless here, he really wants to get the Seismitoad active, because as we've seen, time and time again with Seismitoad, being able to, train lock your opponent while they're poisoned and asleep, you're going to win the game fairly quickly. Especially, if you can knock out that Latios before it gets an attack off, you essentially make a complete mockery of the attack and get rid of all of Max's energy, and hence the good first turn. Now, he does choose to go Shame in there, which I suppose makes sense in that he needed to draw stuff, but it's left him in a fairly precarious position if Max wakes up here, especially if Max can wake up and draw a Lysandra. Although it doesn't look like he has woken up, so he's going to need a switch. He's got a switch, he can go into the Reshiram, he can attach an energy, and he can then free retreat. Although it is a shame he doesn't have a Latios EX on the bench. In a game like this, you really do want a second Latios EX. Now, what he does get there is the free energy on the Hydreigon so that he can shred. But it's kind of... it's a waste of energy. We'll just put it that way. It's a complete waste of energy because, you could be doing 170 with that. And, you could be doing 170 rather than doing 80. Now, if you're wondering about the interaction between the 80 damage and the Quillfish, Hydreigon says the damage isn't affected by any effects on the opponent's active Pokemon, and the ability doesn't affect the damage, it affects the Pokemon, hence the 2 damage counters would still be put on. You saw Max questioning that there. But it's only the damage that isn't affected by effects on the defending Pokemon, and the 2 damage counters from Quillfish's ability is not to do with the damage, so it's not affected. So he does still get the damage. And, you can see where Max is coming from with that attack there. Use the Hydreigon so that you can keep the Latios. Now, the Latios could have knocked it out of its first attack and not lost its energy, because it would have done 60 with the Muscle Band, which would have been enough for the KO with the poison damage. But you can see where he's coming from there. Because if a Pokemon's going to be stranded active and attacked and hurt, and potentially, energy is going to be gotten rid of, then you'd rather it was a Hydreigon, because Hydreigon isn't going to be getting the big KOs. Hydreigon is your general, I'm going to take some little KOs and keep the energy on there. It really is a shame he couldn't draw a Lysandra in order to KO the Shaman, but hey-ho, these things happen. Now, this is a very bad start from Sid here. He's had to waste the water energy to retreat the Shaman and put a Duskull up just as a sacrificial lamb. Now, there's still free energy on the Hydreigon there, so the Hydreigon's going to be able to kill that Duskull very quickly, and he's going to be going down to 3 prizes. One of the biggest problems for Max here is his bench. Now, he seems to have a couple of Shaman, a couple of Reshiram, and a Latios, so he's not able to start building up a second Latios, and that's huge in this game. He really wants to be building up a second Latios. Now, we haven't seen any energy denial cards from Sid. And what we're seeing in this game is, I suppose, the weakness of Sid's deck. In that, and they looked like they were counting out turns there, so I think we might have gone to time, and it's going to just be a draw here. It's kind of like we saw in the previous game. Yeah, and we see a handshake there. We have gone to a draw. Sid's deck was not drawing well there, and that's one of the weaknesses of playing one of these Seismitoad decks with all the tricks. We saw in the previous game, Siobhan's deck just ran. Sid's deck there in that last game really wasn't going very well, and honestly, if it went on, Max was going to be in a very strong position, although Max's deck, one of the big downsides there, it's very difficult to actually arrange your bench properly and get all the Pokemon on there you want. But regardless, we've seen a tie between two very good players playing interesting decks. I'm going to obviously be back with round 3 quite shortly. I haven't looked at who is between. I was playing this tournament, so it's going to be a surprise for me as well as you. Make sure if you haven't checked out already, you check out Game 1. We're going to see the link is going to be in the description for this video for Game 1, just as Max goes and starts playing on Facebook. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you comment and check out my podcast, PTCGRadio, if you haven't done so already. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back shortly with round 3.